We had been celebrating. Celia, Rachel, and myself, we stood on their roof, just 3 stories up, but high enough to feel as if we stood on top of the world. Celia had bought a bottle of disgustingly cheap champagne, a 12-pack of beer, all with money she did not yet have, but money she knew would arrive soon. She was awarded a $5,000 NEA grant, her first, all her own. She had been able to use some of the money that Tribeca Darrell was awarded for the previous year, but that was a pittance. He barely gave her enough to pay for the students' art pads and to rent the easels. A grant of her own would allow her, at least for a few months, to continue the work that she largely abandoned due to her lack of funds. Over the previous year, Celia and I had become something like each other's assistants. We weren't partners so much, or a team. We weren't really a duo either, because we did not create the same projects. We did not share ideas for the same projects. When we worked on one of Celia's pieces, it was hers. She only had her name on it. And when we worked on one of my projects, it was my piece. We did this because we liked each other's work, yes, but also because we couldn't actually afford to pay for any assistance. When I needed her to operate the camera, she was there, behind the lens. And when she wanted somebody other than herself to appear in a film, or if she needed a cameraman when it was her in the film, then I was there to help her. She even taught me how to paint the film frames, which was an incredibly painstaking job. Now, for lay art lovers, ones who believe that a great artwork needs to require great skill, they should love these painted films, because Celia and I would do what dozens of women would do in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, the very beginning of film. Those early films, the colorized ones, like A Trip to the Moon, are already so eerie, the jerky motions of the frames and the washed-out color tones. But Celia's films are even more uncanny because they blend modern technology with this rather antiquated art form, an art form that truly wasn't supposed to last after Technicolor arrived, when it wasn't necessary to dye the films anymore. Not long after we first met, she showed me the few films she had made while still in high school, and I was dumbstruck. I couldn't believe that she'd had this vision before she'd ever left Iowa. It made her more recent work feel weighed down by ideas. She never agreed with me, no, but I believe that if the concept and the conceptual art can't be understood in one brief sentence, then, well, it has more or less failed. But either way, she still did not have very much money, even working 2 and then 3 jobs, even with the Lower East Side rent still cheap by today's standards, though it was skyrocketing as far as we were concerned. She had applied for grants the previous year by submitting her photographic work, and she was roundly rejected. After seeing these early films, I told her to submit them, but she wanted a newer piece. Her films were all more than 5 years old, and she was still in high school when she completed them. I obviously applied and was roundly rejected the year before as well. So we made a pact to each complete new works that we could submit, in the hopes of making more of that work. And after waiting many months to hear a response about our applications, Celia received a phone call. I, however, would receive a form rejection in a few days. I was still happy for her, of course. People thought I might not be. I was. I was never jealous of her in our 20s, in our early and mid-20s. In fact, I was the first to celebrate with her. She and I stood at the edge of her roof, and she handed me the champagne, saying she'd never popped a bottle before. I decided that I should shake it, because We were celebrating, and this seemed to be how you celebrate. So I shook the bottle, and when I barely twisted the cork, it flew over Essex Street like a comet barreling over the Atlantic. The champagne sprayed all over the sidewalk beneath us. We didn't hear the man below. We looked over the edge, and he stared up at us, cursing us, so we leaped back into the shadows. We had drenched him in this disgusting champagne. And then we heard the roof's door open. It couldn't be the man, not so soon. We'd barely regrouped, the three of us, passing the bottle of champagne to one another. But no, it was not the man. It was one of Celia's Cooper Union friends, Veronica, arriving to celebrate with us. She waved a copy of The Voice above her head. She was bringing news. She yelled, "Celia!" and laughed incredibly hard, and it was like, oh my God. What, we all wondered. She was incredibly annoying, often doing these laughing spells. I assumed it was nothing. She probably farted on the way up the staircase, which always made this girl laugh, and then she'd tell everyone in case we didn't already know. She howled, "I can't believe you're in the motherfucking Voice!" Celia said, "The Voice? For what? I haven't shown anything in nearly a year." Veronica said it's because of some NEA thing. NEA thing? Why would the Voice care that Celia was given a $5,000 grant? And how would the Voice even know she'd received the phone call just that morning? But as we flipped to the article, in the dark, unable to see, with the four of us slowly shuffling over to the edge of the building where the street lamp shone, the roof's door creaked open once more. A man at the door yelled, "You motherfuckers!" and he stormed across the roof, soaking wet in our champagne. The front door of the building, like many of those LES buildings back then, did not lock. We hadn't anticipated this. He charged us like a bull, with his head down, ready to gore us and shove us off of the building. He was halfway across the roof. He was 2/3 away across the roof. Not knowing what else to do, I raised my arms up into the air, making myself as big as I could, as if I really was about to face off against a wild animal. And I began roaring at him, as if I was a grizzly bear. Celia, Rachel, and Veronica, they all followed my lead and raised their arms up into the air. And we roared! This man slowed. This man stopped. We surrounded him and roared. Instead of a bull, the man looked like a sewer rat lost on the roof's black tar. He stumbled backwards, falling over the case of beer. He said, "Fuck this," before taking 2 cans of beer that had rolled out of the box. He ran for the door, disappeared down the stairs, and us bears never saw him again.